Hey, thanks for coming. So this is our analysis of Budweiser data and our targeted marketing campaign. So the questions we asked in our marketing campaign were, where should we intervene? Where should we sell new products? And the second question we asked was, what new products should we sell in these target areas that we identified? So to answer the where question, we first had to answer the question whether or not we are serving states differently, whether or not the amount of activity we have in each state differs. We use the number of breweries as a measure of our activity in each state, and we can see from this heat map the lighter colors indicate higher amount of breweries, and the darker colors indicate less number of breweries. And we can see that there's a great deal of variation in the number of breweries in each state. The lowest number of breweries is 1, and the highest number of breweries is 47, and that's in Colorado. So we can see that there's a great variation of number of breweries in each state. So if we wanted to locate the underserved areas, using number of breweries is a good metric. Now, before we ask the question, what new product should we sell in each state, we first have to answer whether or not states want different products at all, whether or not beer preferences differ at all between states. And we can see from this graph that the bitterness of beers, states want different beers. For example, we can see that the most bitter beer is actually brewed in Astoria, Oregon, with a bitterness of 138, and the least bitter beer is actually brewed in Boonville, California, with a bitterness of 4. So states clearly have different preferences for their bitterness. Now, will these bitternesses translate to different styles is another question. So the next analysis we carried out before our marketing campaign was whether or not bitterness and alcoholic content correlates, and whether they can predict other variables. And we can actually see that alcoholic content, as it increases, as alcohol in a beer increases, it gets more bitter. Now this suggests a practical use in that we can use alcohol to predict bitterness if there's missing bitterness values. And now onto that point, onto the point of missing values, we can see that bitterness is actually 1,000 missing values in our data frame. So this highlights that later on we're going to prove that bitterness is actually a good predictor of other variables. So it's crucial that we refine and improve our data quality to get more bitterness. We can see that bitterness has 1,000 missing values, while alcoholic content only has 60 missing values. So next came for our analysis was looking at the distribution of alcoholic content. Our incentive for this was that if alcoholic content is normally distributed, we can make inferences to larger populations, and we can actually see that these alcoholic content follows a bell curve shape, and it is considered a normal distribution. So we first, before we did our marketing campaign and identified where we should intervene in terms of our service areas, we looked at whether or not alcohol and bitterness, whether styles have certain distinctive ratios of bitterness to alcohol, and whether bitterness and alcohol can actually predict a style of a beer if we don't know what the style is, but we know what their alcohol and bitterness are. And we created a model on our data, on a part of our data, and tested it on another part of our data. And we can see that the accuracy of our predictive model is 83, and our sensitivity is 87%, which means that if we were provided an ale without knowing it was an ale, our model can predict based only on its bitterness and alcohol and correctly classify it as an ale. And our model had a specificity of 82%, which means that if we were provided a IPA without knowing it's an IPA, and we were only provided its bitterness and alcoholic content, we can correctly classify it as an IPA. So having established that our IBA and ABV are good predictors of style, we move on to our marketing campaign that we introduced in the beginning. So first, we wanted to identify where we should sell new products. So to answer the where question, we looked at the most populous cities in America that we currently serve, and we filtered them to find only the cities that have the fewest number of breweries per person. So looking at these underserved cities, we looked more at their metrics, and we determined, okay, in these particular cities, what are new things we should sell? And a tactic for determining what the new product we should sell were what are the percentages of beer styles that are currently being sold in these underserved cities. Our idea is that if it is selling less than a certain national average, the underrepresented styles are the ones we should introduce into these areas. So first, the where question. In this case, who needs more beer? Which cities need more beer? So to provide a little background, what we did first was we combined our brewery data and our beer data with city data based on the city of each brewery, and with it came population data about each brewery. And we identified that the cities that were most populous but that we served the least were Detroit, Memphis, Nashville, Kansas City, and Sacramento. In terms of the breweries per person, Detroit had the lowest number of breweries per person, and it was the best candidate for us to intervene and introduce new products when we open these new breweries. Okay, so here's what you need, right? We need to know what are these new styles that we should introduce into cities like Detroit, Kansas City, Memphis, who clearly do not have enough breweries but have a large population. So which beer style should we sell to which city? So from this we can see that from these error bars, so this graph is showing us both the national percentage for each style and also the standard deviation of the percentages for each style. So how much, for example, ale is showing us that the average percentage of ales in each city is around 50%, and its standard deviation is showing us that each city's ale percentage typically varies from 0.25 away from the 50th percent of ale. Now, our tactic was to look for the cities that underrepresented in each style. So we can see that Detroit is not selling enough ale compared to the typical amount of ale sold in each city. So our priorities in terms of what products we should sell are that we should produce more ale in Kansas City and Detroit. We should produce more other types of beer in Sacramento, Kansas, and Nashville, more IPA in Sacramento and Nashville, and so on from this list. And a note is that the percentages don't add up to 100 is because we calculated it wasn't a simple average of the style across all beers. It was the average of the percentage of each style in each city. So thank you for coming and watching this presentation, and I hope you took something away from this, from the visuals and the information. Goodbye.